Bam chicka wham wham.
And I was kind of amazed. I was like, what? I mean, you do this work alone in a booth with maybe one or two guys looking at you going, good, next. And then and there's no feedback, you know? It's not doing theater where people laugh or boo.
Throw things.
Yeah, or throw tomatoes. Actually, the Italian tradition is to throw money. They're paying you to leave. Here's some money. Get out of here. And it hurts, I think. I would think. I've never been booed. Until when I said, oh, man, that was weird. But, yeah, and it was sweet. You know, it would affect people, and then when you realize that, it's really kind of important, I think. And then you go back in the booth and go, this is not in a bubble. I'm doing this for people out there. This is for you out there. Beep, beep, beep. Brilliant. Okay. Did you talk yet, lady? You talked. Who hasn't talked yet? You with the tattoo, the black hat.
I was just wondering, do you all ever get the opportunity to see the animation before you do the voice, or do you always have to wait?
With anime, it's always done ahead of time. And that's the challenge, is we have to match our performance to the action and the mouth of the animated performance. When I do Ninja Turtles, Mikey, Venture Brothers, prelay shows, prelay means we pre-record voices, and then that's how they animate. But they should be storyboarding before the vocal performances. Well, depending. New show I'm doing for Cartoon Network, they are storyboarding kind of at the same time, so they're hoping to get the vocal performances first before they storyboard and then make animatics, which are photographs of the storyboards being animated to the vocal performance. Following? So, in anime, it's usually always the case that you see what you're doing, but not on prelay traditional stuff. Sometimes on video games, it goes both ways. Or sometimes on video games, you have picture but no mouth. So they will walk around going, and then you're like, these things are much too slow, we must beat them. And then they make the mouths happen later. But on the one show I did with Laura Bailey, Kurokami, which was the first time it was ever simultaneously released, we had temp animation. So sometimes it would go to like a pencil and then be animated, and you're like, what? How do I match that flap? So we'd do it a couple different ways, and then when I would get the final picture the day before it aired sometimes, ouch! And I would be mixing, I'd go, oh, okay, I can edit it this way to make it fit. But for the most part, anime, you see it. Prelay, you don't.
Now, as far as the anime, because you know it's been released usually, and it is in Japanese. Now, you guys might have a different take because you're both directors and things. But as far as an actor doing an English voice to a Japanese show, do I watch the original Japanese episode before I go and record the English version? I don't know if that's actually even remotely part of your question, but I can answer it anyway. Sometimes, depends on the show. Japanese, in my opinion, is just the coolest language out there. So there's no point trying to mimic a performance that's already been done. And usually, the performance is great for what it was, and you kind of want to put your own twist on it, right? But I did find for certain shows that it was helpful to kind of have a really good grasp of what's going on. For example, the last episode of Death Note, I probably watched the original Japanese about 4 or 5 times because I was terrified that I was going to screw it all up and you guys were going to throw things at me. So I just, and at the same time, I also really just did not want that series to end. So I prolonged it as best as I could. But now, with you guys being directors, do you get to, have to, or are able to watch an entire episode of what you're about to direct in Japanese before it's done in English? Question for me, I'm curious.
Oh yeah, you gots to. You gotta know what's going on. And it's funny because I worked on shows where you could actually speak to, actually it's a Toshi story. He was working on a show and there was some ambiguity with certain characters and where they were headed. So he gets in touch with the production staff in Japan and goes, hey, we got a question about this. We're not sure if this character is gonna keep the same gender by the end, and is this the killer or is this the killer? And they were like, what do you think? He's like, I'm asking. They're like, well, we don't want to spoil it. I'm sorry, but we've got to make it so you can tell us now so we don't cast it wrong. No, it's a secret. He's like, right, now what? So, as long as it's been done, I think you have to. You got to know what you're directing. And the actors may or may not want to, may or may not be able to. Sometimes, we know with secrecy, you can't let episodes be released unless it's an older show. So it's really up to the director to guide everyone through the performance, not just so they sound like they're having the same conversation, but the little subtle things that will make sense later on, you've got to give to the actors because they will have any idea.
Exactly, and the way we work, there's so many time constraints. Oftentimes, well, there isn't time for for me to tell Brad, who's in 2 scenes out of 12, everything that goes on. Like, he doesn't have time, I can't show him physically. So the director must see the episode, and the episode after that, and after that, and after that, so I can briefly sum up, here's what happened before, here's basically what's about to happen. And also, I feel as a director, I don't always like my actors to know everything possible, because I think you get a more organic reaction out of them if they don't know what is going to happen to their character in the long run. Like, I don't want them to know that, hey, in episode 10, your best friend's going to die. They don't need to know that in episode 1. I mean, if they've discovered it on their own because they can go on the internet and read summaries, or if, say, like Funimation now does a lot of streaming with Japanese subtitles before we ever dub it. So it's possible, certainly, if an actor wants to do that on their own volition, that's fine. But yes, as a director, we do have to